Hello. So I've been doing a bit of reading recently about transport, sustainable transport in cities. It's just part of the solutions to climate change that I've been interested in, and I thought it'd be worth, trying to get a good idea of the solutions that I want to propose when I'm writing to my MP or when I'm involved in various campaigns. So I'm trying to, get a picture of the sort of low carbon world that we're going to have to move towards. So what I thought I'd do, just a quick video just to mention a few of the things I've learned so far. I mean, the most obvious one is that basically cars are evil and we need to get rid of cars. I mean, that's probably not too much of a surprise, but there were quite a few surprises along the way. Another point that really surprised me, being a European, is that a lot of I think of Europe as being developed, and European cities as being busy and industrial places, just as much as I think of American cities being that way. But in fact, in terms of transport, they're completely different. Whereas in the average European city, around 40% of journeys, just over 40% of journeys, are made by car. In the US, it's about 85%. So over twice as many people in America, in the cities, are travelling by car. In Europe, it's generally a mixture of public transport. So there's buses, there's trams, subways, bicycling, walking, and there's cars. So this is why there was recently an article that was picked up by a couple of US Green blogs about the fact that I think it was a Norwegian court had ruled that cars can't be called green, because even a Toyota Prius, however efficient it is, because obviously of the mineral extraction and the vast resource use involved in any form of private transport. And the comments under this article were quite negative. That it surprised me, but that was before I learnt how completely car-centric American cities are. So it's obviously going to be seen as extreme if you can't differentiate between the greenest possible transport option, namely a green car, and the worst possible transport option, namely a Hummer. Whereas in Europe, that's not extreme at all. All we're saying is, that 40%, we need to get rid of that. We need to get the 60% up to 100%. We need to get more people cycling. We need to get more people on buses, on the tube, etc. So I thought that was quite interesting. Another thing which is interesting is that a lot of the wealthier Asian cities apparently are very compact and concentrated on transport, particularly on light rail and electric rail systems. So they've kind of leapfrogged this theoretical car-dependent state, which in fact is. There are plenty of examples of car-dependent cities in the US, also in Australia, to a lesser extent in Canada, but it's not actually a stage that you need to go through. Another interesting thing is that probably the cities in the world closest to where most American cities are in terms of utter dependence on cars, they're the poorer Asian cities, which are developing at the moment, and it's ruining their economies, because they're spending like up to 20% of their gross regional product on transport. And this is the levels aren't quite this high in America, but I believe about 12% or something, which compares to these terrible subsidized public transport systems in Europe, which mean that in our average cities it's like 6 to 8%, or perhaps a bit less, is what we actually need to spend on transport. So the economic arguments also seem to be quite distorted in terms of what you see in politics and newspapers. Building a motorway is obviously good for the economy, this sort of thing. What else? One of the most important factors in terms of energy use is basically the density of the urban population. There's also quite a strong narrative in the UK from I believe Thomas Harding and these sort of people, Thomas Hardy, who were sort of rural romanticists, and they talked about dark satanic mills, and that sounds more like Dickens than Harding, but about they had a really negative image of cities, so they tried to so the planning rules in Britain were anti-urban basically. So there were quite a few policies which led to lower density cities than desirable. But a lot of this, by the time these ideas there was a reaction against it, but most of the city developing had already happened in certain circumstances, so they were mainly walking cities. But then when America went to develop its cities, they did go for this sort of automobile city with densities of population population of 10 people per hectare, which compares not very well to 200 in European cities. So obviously this sort of low density settlement is an absolute nightmare in terms of infrastructure. In terms of providing public transport, it's tricky. In terms of providing the water, dealing with sewage, providing lighting, basically any facility that's provided by the city, public expense, anything you can think of is more costly to do in an expansive way rather than in a compact manner. And this sort of development, this expansive development, is more or less a symptom that you can call it the auto city as a model of how cities develop, a model of prioritizing cars over pedestrians, over cyclists, over rail and other forms of transport. And I think this is where, in fact, this is sort of one of the main things I've learned, is that I've always thought of the downside of cars and trucks in cities is the fact that you can't get on the roads. The roads are just for them. It's rather than you can't be used for. It's not a park. Basically, you have so many roads. You also have the pollution. You have the noise. It's quite incredible, really. If you didn't live in a city in that sort of environment, you'd probably be kind of appalled. You think, does it really have to be this way? But that's only part of it. The other part of it is that's only part of the costs, the health effects and quality of life. The rest of it comes from the fact that that cars drive this expansive development, this sprawling development, which costs a fortune in so many other ways. So I thought that was quite interesting. Basically, then I know someone, one of my friends I met in London when I spent 6 months down there, is one of the authors of a report on transport and climate change and the health effects, and this is being published in The Lancet, which is probably the UK's top medical journal, and it's just such an appalling story in terms of the health effects of private transport. So that's all I want to say for now, but I'm looking into it further, and it seems that there's so many ways that policies that save people's lives, that improve the quality of a life, that improve a whole urban experience, also fight climate change. You know, just as a nice add-on at the end there, you know, we also save the planet.